This one coming in a little bit later than I was hoping. This one's gonna be a doozy because this one is going to be one of the 5 out of the remaining 10 seasons that I will have watched for the second time around last year. So I'm definitely gonna have a lot more to say about those. And this one's gonna be pretty loaded. Yeah, so I guess just getting right into it. The 35th Super Sentai season, and that was in 2011, was Kaizoku Sentai Gokaiger. There's supposed to be a spin in the middle, but whatever. This was the season I watched right before I committed to my journey in 2019. I actually kind of knew about Gokaiger as it was going along in 2011. That was the year I started college. That was the year I graduated high school, and then I started college, and for whatever reason, I think it was the Hero Getter theme actually found its way into my YouTube recommended videos, and I watched it. I was like, oh, it's really cool. And for some reason it just brought me back to being a kid, and how much I liked Power Rangers, and kind of almost reignited my interest in it. I say almost because I really didn't start getting back into it, or I didn't start getting into Super Sentai until 2018, and that was because of the Power Rangers comics that had been going on from 2016. So I wasn't unfamiliar with it. I just thought the theme was so cool, and so someone made a video of the Hero Getter theme where the Rangers of each season are doing their morph or their roll call, and they say their respective team name over when the song is supposed to say their team name. And 35 seasons, it's a lot. It's pretty long running. All I had to say was it was a blast watching it. I enjoyed it so much, and I think it cemented my fandom as a Super Sentai fan. But the thing is, so I kind of know that jumping into something like Gokaiger that has all these tributes and cameos, which I will definitely be getting into later, is a little weird. It's almost like watching Infinity War first, and then getting into the MCU after that, or even Endgame, and then watching the rest of the MCU after that, where everything's cool, it's fun to watch, but some references and things just go over your head and you don't really know what's going on. But in that same sense, because of how Super Sentai is structured, it was a little bit more feasible for Gokaiger to be a bit of an entryway into Super Sentai, because the whole season was good enough to stand alone on its own, and paired with all the tribute episodes, it was like mini history lessons, maybe even more so than the lessons we got for the post credits in Gokaiger. So definitely the thing that I liked about the season was all the tribute episodes, the cameos, and all the references. And sure, the first time around, a lot of it went over my head, but as I was going through my journey in 2019, I was watching everything, trying to pick up, okay, what do I remember from the Gokaiger episode? The second time around, I picked up on so much more because I had watched all of the Super Sentai leading up to it. Well, 19 out of the 34 previous, which leaves 15 unaccounted for at the time, because I watched Jetman after I complete the circle, which I will get to later. I definitely think one of my favorite characters is Ikari Guy, and because he's the big Super Sentai fanboy, and interestingly enough, he's the only human on the team, and I actually think they did that for a reason. But I just like how he is so into Super Sentai, and it's also kind of weird how his fandom kind of shows that Super Sentai in their world are real life heroes, but then they also had like a following like a TV show, because sometimes it was actually the Jetman episode, he was humming the Jetman theme or he might have been even singing it. So it was just kind of funny that it's kind of real life heroes and they have a following, which actually wouldn't be too weird, but it did throw me off at first. The more I look at my notes, the less I think I can do this as a things I liked and things that threw me off. So I'm just gonna speak from my heart. Watching Gokaiger the first time around was kind of like getting a mini history lesson in all of the Super Sentai seasons. And and then when I started my Super Sentai journey in 2019, watching through all of the Super Sentai, it gave me something to look out for. But I was only able to pick up on small references. For instance, in the Mega Ranger tribute episode, the first time we see Genta Date is when he's, the school is dismissed for lunch, and he flips a coin trying to decide what he wants to eat, and it lands on whatever, and he's like, yes, yakiniku bento. So then when I was watching Mega Ranger, it was very apparent that Genta Date likes yakiniku, which is meat, like Korean barbecue or gyukaku, or just all you can eat meat, which is normally for celebrations. But anyway, or even something like Time Ranger, when you find out that at the time for me, the random woman and boy who shows up are Domon Time Yellow's wife and son. So then when I got around to watching Time Ranger, I saw how that relationship developed, and the son technically does make an appearance at the finale. Watching Gokaiger the second time around was a whole different experience, because not only did it solidify the initial references I saw, but it helped me realize more about Super Sentai, and I think it's actually going to be related to my favorite episode that I'll get to at the end of this. It also helped remind me of certain things, because every season seems to have a lesson, and the way that Gokaiger was able to focus each tribute episode with that season's respective lesson helped me help remind me, and for the most part confirm the lessons that I picked up as I was watching the original Super Sentai, as I was going through them. And yes, I am going to go through each and every single one. The thing about the lessons is they were often rooted and related to the ranger that was making a cameo appearance. And I think that'll make sense as I start to go through these. So, I didn't really have enough room to write in this because I didn't leave enough pages, so it's on my phone. The problem is it's kind of unorganized, so I'm going to have to stumble through this. So I'm actually going to try to go through these in the order of the seasons, because the order of appearance in Gokaiger is all over the place, and so are my notes, but I'm going to try to look for them, so this is going to take a while. So although Dragon Ranger from June Ranger does make an appearance as a part of resurrecting Guy and giving him his mission, there is no June Ranger tribute episode, sadly. In Dai Ranger, the first reference that I picked up was Ryo, he's still trying to make the world's best gyoza. Signs of a real master and someone who wants to get good at their craft. When I was watching Diet Ranger, that was kind of what I was looking for. The second time when I was watching Gokaiger, I noticed that they did suitless roll calls in this, and the reason why that's significant is because Diet Ranger started the tradition of doing these suitless or helmetless roll calls towards the finale, and helping Guy realize that he didn't need his powers to be a hero, because in that episode, Guy lost his morpher because of the monster of the week, and he wasn't feeling like he could do it because he was kind of reliant on his powers. But Ryo, and with what the Diet Rangers went through and what led them to doing their suitless roll call, started, they did their suitless roll call, and realizing that you didn't need the powers to be the hero to make a difference, to fight for justice and all that stuff. In Gokaiger, not only does Ninja Man and Tsuruhime make an appearance, the Gokaiger episode was actually kind of the clip show, and they always tend to do it for like New Year's and summer. So this was the kind of New Year's episode where they kind of recap the whole year, and they are demonstrating their powers to Ninja Man for the first time. But then in the next episode, kind of puts them under special training just to make sure that they are worthy and capable of, handling the Gokaiger ultimate power, special power. The monster of the week affects Gokai Green and Gokai Silver, Doc and Guy, and then they kind of get into a heated argument, and they're about to duel. They're about to destroy each other. But then Gokai Pink, I'm kind of interrupts them in the middle, and it's actually kind of a parallel in the earlier training scene where they don't want to go too hard on her, not because she's a girl, but because she's their teammate that they adore and don't want to hurt. What I kind of got out of that is, it's actually, I might be stretching this one, but I want to say it's meant to be about trusting in people, trusting in your comrades, because for one thing, part of Ninja Man's reluctance in sharing the powers with them is he was too trusting, and he got into trouble. And I think that's also, the way I see it, is kind of a reference to the Ninja Quest arc in Gokaiger, and actually noted it as my favorite episode or arc, because even though all the Rangers had to go on their own separate quests and retrieve their respective scrolls, they had to trust in each other that they would be able to accomplish each of their respective quests. So that's what I got out of the Gokaiger tribute episode. All I really got was powers becoming one and relying on others, because of the origin of all Rangers' powers, and it's all different kinds of powers and how they are able to combine it. They do manage to combine it they do use that fact, and they finally make a team finisher canon, but because all of the finishing moves have been done individually. Everyone makes their own slash or their own blast, but they haven't done the type of finisher where they all launch from the same weapon. With Gokaiger, it was obviously the bizarre relationship between Insan, who is the female of the villain group, and Red Racer. And when I watched Gokaiger, knowing about Red Racer's romantic relationship with Zonette, who is the female villain of that team, and how central it was to the season, it made so much sense in that episode. And then when the special power is just teaching traffic safety, that was which is what they did for Car Ranger, but also acknowledges its place as the sort of parody season of Super Sentai. With Mega Ranger, at first I thought it was like Kenta Tate and his love for Yakiniku, but then after watching Mega Ranger, and then coming back around to Gokaiger, what I noticed is the importance of why he had the Gokaigers be high school students for a day, because one of the themes for Mega Ranger is that, youth is the future. Mega Ranger really covered the themes of youth and how schools are filled with students' dreams. For instance, they had Aim and Joe, who were Gokai Pink and Gokai Blue. They were helping a girl confess her feelings for a guy, and in Mega Ranger, because it's a high school setting, that wasn't uncommon. Yellow and Green, Luca and Doc, got to know the students of the current IONET research team, which is the same team the same club that Kenta Date and his team were a part of. And then Red, Captain Marvelous, just got to hang out and play basketball. And they got a sense of, the importance of youth and, pursuing dreams and stuff like that. And when I watched the episode the second time, it made a lot of sense of the Doctor's relationships with the Rangers and how he was trying to always look out for them, make sure they went to school, they got their tests, and that they were ready for the future. So with Ginga Man, not only do Ryoma, who's Ginga Red, and Hyuga, Black Knight, make an appearance. I didn't really pick up on the donuts thing right away, but so what happens in the Ginga Man episode is it's basically Ikari Guy, Gokai Silver's like third outing or something with the team. They're trying to look for the Ginga Man special power, and they come right as Black Knight Hyuga is in the middle of a fight with a villain group, and he's actually with a villain who's trying to steal his power. And in that episode, Hyuga and Ikari Guy have a heart-to-heart, a moment together, and he's saying, give me the Gokai Cellular, I'll become the next Gokai Silver, so he can defeat the villain that's chasing him. And then, at first Guy is about to do it, but then he's like, no, I want to fight, like, and really trying to cement Guy's conviction into being a Super Sentai Ranger. And the reference I got out of that was in Ginga Man, Hyuga had to give up his Ginga powers in order to wield the weapon that was going to defeat the main villain. And although he would eventually get his powers back at the end, or his powers were always there, he needed the conviction to do what he needs to do, and he wanted to make sure that Guy understood that he needs to have that same conviction if he is to be the sixth Gokaiger. It's like with that thing, it's one thing to tell someone else you're something, but it's another thing to convince yourself, kind of a deal. With Go 5, it's really focused around Luca and Aim and how they have a sisterly dynamic, and then what I got out of that, and they kind of have a heart-to-heart moment where it's kind of tired of Luca always looking after her and trying to convince her that it's okay for her to look after her too, because they have that sisterly dynamic, and actually kind of got that as a reference of the overall sibling dynamic of Go 5, because Go 5 has that first responder rescue motif. They managed to cover the theme of the burning rescue spirits, which is the theme of Go 5, and protecting the youth is protecting the future. in Time Ranger, like I kind of mentioned when I first watched it. Finding out that that was Domon's son was a surprise. I'm like, whoa. And then also, reading up after and how when they did the time travel and when they went back, that was actually how they integrated it into their appearance in the previous crossover movie with Shinkenger and Gokaiger, because they had just kind of started doing the pre-season cameos. But then the reference I got out of that after coming back around the second time is, doing what you can to change your future, because Guy is talking with the boy, and he's at the temple because he and his mom Honami have to move to, I think, America, probably New York, for her new job she's a photojournalist. And the boy was really scared because he has to make new friends, but then Guy kind of talking about like, oh well, it's an opportunity to make more new friends, and how he kind of had to do the same thing because he kind of had to move around a lot. So Guy basically drops the same line that Tatsuya drops in like the second or third episode of Time Ranger, where he says, even if you can't change your future, you can try to change your tomorrow, or something along those lines. In Gal Ranger, it was all about protecting the earth, and some things had to come naturally and they had to come to you, kind of referencing his bond with Yao Lion. I think that some of these aren't perfect. With Hurricaneer, the second time around, I thought it was going to be about the whole bonds and technique thing, but it actually ended up being something else. And for Hurricaneer, it's actually about how they were able to do something different, how they really broke the mold of Super Sentai, because they're space pirates, so they're not exactly always the best example of what it means to be a Super Sentai. But I actually think that is somewhat related to my favorite episode in Ninja, so I hope to expand on that more later. Oh, and it's also kind of interesting that in that episode they kind of expand on the bond between red, yellow, and blue, because Hurricaneer kind of had that same color convention, as well as how watching through the series, they do have their own special bonds with each other, in the same way that Doc, Im, and Guy kind of have their own special relationship with each other. So in Abba Ranger actually kind of had two references, because the first time was when Mikoto Nakadai and Time Fire and the Dragon Ranger from Drew Ranger are all there to present Guy with his powers. Holy shit. Oh, I just know something. Okay, anyway. Dragon Ranger, Mikoto Nakadai, who is about a killer, and Time Fire make an appearance to present Guy with his powers as he's in a coma. And, he kind of tells them and Mikoto Nakadai is telling them to keep things interesting, and that was kind of his deal when he was in Abba Ranger, because the whole reason why he did things was to keep things interesting, whether it was siding with the villain group and then betraying the villain group, and really sticking to being who he is, kind of. And then the second time is when they had an actual Abba Ranger tribute episode, where the one where everybody morphs into an Abba Ranger and they play the same theme song. In that episode, Im does a lot of quick changes, which I think Randu does a lot in Abba Ranger also, because they had also a similar episode, but then they also did some other things, like they had an interruptive eye catch where Navi, their little mascot, not a bird, is telling them like, oh, are they going to make it to to the next episode or whatever, about it blue, Yukito actually makes an appearance and tells them that there is another, Abba Ranger power that they have access to. He's telling them to go wild to their heart's content, which, given the theme of Abba Ranger and, Dino Guts, it fits. Because Abare is supposed to be like, apparently Abare kind of translates to rampage or berserk or something like that. Gokaiger, Bond, Jasmine, and Doggy actually, all three of them make appearances, as short as they are. And, at this point, they're space pirates, so they're wanted. And, Doggy Crew is trying to arrest them. Captain Marvelous get into some trouble. And then, the only way for them to escape is for him to let Captain Marvelous go. And then they kind of have a small heart moment, and he's asking them, how did you know I was going to come back for you? And he says he just trusted in, maybe the translation was weird, but it's like he kind of just trusted in his pride, or he trusted in his conviction or something, because that's essentially what he had to do when Bond joined the team for Gokaiger, and how Bond's same pride, same conviction, and albeit the same hot-headedness is what got him to become a Fire Squad Ranger. I do have to say, Bond's hair in this, holy crap. The big thing in Mod Ranger was Yuki, or courage, and how important that was for being a Super Sentai. Probably should have put more notes, because throughout the entirety of Mod Ranger they really emphasize the idea of courage, because that's basically what the mom was trying to teach them, and how that courage is what gets them their new powers and stuff like that. So in Gokaiger they cover the theme of finding your personal treasure and what it means to you, and it kind of focused on Captain Marvelous as he was kind of trying to figure out what that means too. It brings him back to a memory with Akared, who is apparently also very important in the Gokaiger versus Super Sentai movie, so maybe I should have watched that to get a little bit more info on Akared and how he had fun, like going on adventures looking for treasure, but what does it really mean? Like, why is he looking for the treasure, and what does it mean to him? And I think what I eventually deduce is that his treasure is going on these adventures with his team, his friends, his family. So I think even Akared asks him, what is he looking for in life, kind of a thing, and that's why he took him in. Gokaiger, it kind of covers the idea of, train and aim for the top, and you can change. They encounter John Gokaiger, when he teaches Aim and Doc a little bit of, martial arts that they can use against the Monster of the Week, who was apparently from the Gokaiger summer movie, maybe. So that, for one thing, that kind of cements the movies as canon, because Aim and Doc kind of don't see themselves on the same level compared to Luca, Joe, and Captain Marvelous, who are yellow, blue, and red. They don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they can do it. But with, after training with John and getting the Gokaiger's powers, they learn that, they train and aim for the top, that they can change. And with Gokaiger, I think that was a reference to how Rio was able to, he was always striving for the best, and how he eventually changed. He literally changed to the other side. Although, sadly, he died, but you know what I mean. And then with Gokaiger, I kind of picked up on this, and I think it's kind of along the lines of, like, if you want something, you have to go look for it. Because in this one, the Gokaiger are trying to help Sosuke help, Speedo or Boson and Bear RV look for, Speedor and BRV's son, who is kind of going wild. And, it's a mech. And he's saying that, he's kind of disobedient because he's afraid of having to try to live up to his parents, Speedo and BRV, through having the heart-to-heart with Sosuke, and how the Gokaigers are there to help with that experience. They kind of learn and pick up on that. If you want something, you have to go look for it yourself. It's not going to be given to you. Or you have to, if you want something, you have to go after it yourself. Something along those lines. Again, these aren't perfect. My voice is going, but I'm almost there. With Shinkenger, it's actually Kaoru Shiba who makes an appearance, and Kaoru Shiba was the female Red Ranger, the second Red Ranger who makes an appearance in the endgame arc of Shinkenger. She's debating whether or not to give them the Shinkenger power, and in that episode, it kind of starts to uncover Captain Marvelous and Joe's relationship and how they met, and covers a little bit of Joe's background. At first she sees them fight, she kind of deems them unworthy at first, but then, seeing them, recover, fight again, then she kind of realizes, or she kind of remembers the loyalty that everyone in Shinkenger had to Takeru because of what he built up. And that's why, she was touched by that's why she was kind of touched by the relationship that Captain Marvelous had built up with everyone else. So Gokaiger, their crossover was an episode. It was actually a movie, which I did watch. It's basically about, protecting humans is protecting the earth. Even though this season happened before all the seasons I watched. Live Man had a tribute episode, so I'm not able to really pick up on the lesson of Live Man, but it is interesting that they use Live Man's what happens in Live Man as a way for one of the characters to find to figure out an answer to a question or dilemma that he's dealing with. I've written here, if you can at least save their souls, they don't let other mistakes happen. And I was reading over the a quick synopsis of Live Man. It's pretty interesting. It's kind of a classic, like friends become bad guys because of I forget whatever reason. So it sounds like they tried their best to save them, but they couldn't. So their last choice was to basically put them out of their misery, and that's essentially what this character has to do later on. So Jetman has a tribute episode, but spoiler alert, that's my favorite episode, so we'll get to that in a bit. Battle Fever J, I kind of didn't really pick up on. Yeah, so in terms of all the seasons that I watched, those were the lessons I picked up, and those were the lessons I picked up when watching through Gokaiger again. And maybe my method of watching 2 seasons a month in the course of a year wasn't flawless. Like I may have missed some things, but it was pretty cool that it reminded me of those lessons and kind of speaks to Super Sentai in a larger sense. But that's actually, again, related to my favorite episode, which I'll be getting to in a bit. So just a quick rundown of the things that threw me off about this season. Like I mentioned, sadly there is no G Ranger tribute episode, although we do see an appearance by Gosh, Mammoth Ranger, and technically Dragon Caesar. Unfortunately, there is no dedicated G Ranger tribute episode. Speaking of the tribute episodes, something that I probably would not have picked up on was apparently the main reason why this season was riddled with cameos and these tribute episodes was because of the 2011 earthquakes that hit Japan. Like, originally was not meant to be like this, apparently. I wouldn't have picked up on it just because the way the Rangers' powers worked, how they were able to call on the previous Rangers' powers, and the fact that it was a 35th anniversary season, it just made sense. So I didn't really pick up on it until Lost in Tokusatsu kind of covered it in his video of when real life affects Tokusatsu, and Gokaiger was one of them. And I think the reason why there was a particular push for all these cameos and tribute episodes was because, if I'm remembering the story correctly, Teruaki Ogawa, who portrays Hyuga, Black Knight, and also Ninja Red Sasuke from Kamen Ranger, he tweeted a picture of a bust or a statue of Go Ranger, who was the first Super Sentai, still standing after all the debris and rubble from the earthquake and the tsunami had settled, trying to give hope to the people. And apparently he's also like a big ambassador for Super Sentai or something, I think. So then, in order to, after such a huge disaster hit, they wanted to give hope back to the kids and to the people. So that's why they threw in all of these tributes and cameos, just to kind of remind people of, hope. But then, kind of on my second watch through, and then after knowing this information, I wouldn't say it became that much more apparent, but I do think that, watching through, it's like I was kind of able to pick out, I feel like that one was maybe added after the fact. This wasn't originally here. They kind of threw this one in last minute. And I think the big giveaway is related to, so some of the Ranger powers affect the mechs, or their mecha. And, sometimes it changes form, and sometimes they have a non-CGI version. But then there are some Ranger powers that they get that aren't so heavily effective on the mech. Like, they may get an ability, for instance, when they got the King Command power, it can do the spinning slash that Black Knight can do with Taurus. I think with like the Live Man, there's a hologram of the Live Man Megazord over the Gokaiger mech, and then it does its final finisher. So things like that, things that were like CGI'd and last minute and really only seen once, and then maybe again in the finale endgame arc. That was kind of it. Everything else other than that felt pretty solid. So I thought the writing and the characters and the story for this season was really good, and I didn't mind the tributes and cameo episodes. That I actually enjoyed them a lot, but I could only wonder what the original intention was going to be, because they do go into some pretty deep character backstory stuff, like for Joe and Captain Marvelous, and they managed to do a little bit of something for all the characters, but some of them didn't quite have the same attention that Joe and Marvelous's backstories had. I mean, then Luca, then I'm and Doc, like they could have definitely done a little bit more for I'm, Doc, and Guy, because they maybe only had a 2-part episode at best for each, but Luca, Joe, Captain Marvelous had pretty spaced out side stories. For instance, Captain Marvelous had his rivalry with Bosco, who was another pirate member before, he caused a mutiny and supposedly killed Akared. And then Joe and his relationship with Body Zorg, who was a brainwashed general on the villain side, who was his biggest mentor before he was going to help him defect. Luca and, her constant pursuit of money and how she grew up poor and, how that's shaped her as a person and how she wants to buy a planet for, other orphaned kids and how she lost a sister, so that's why she has an attachment to Aim. And then Doc, even though he's mostly there for comic relief, he does have a story, and I think the story is that he is pretty regular. The fact that I think that's the point of Doc, is that he's not supposed to stand out, that he was kind of brought along for the ride. And then Aim, who's a former princess, trying to, even though their planet was destroyed, she's still trying to be a representative of her family across the galaxy, and how she eventually managed to avenge her parents. That episode was really good, by the way. And then Guy, we got a little bit of Guy here and there, but other than his introduction episode, we don't really get that strong of a backstory. Maybe they could have covered more of how and why he is so into Super Sentai. So I guess in that sense, the tribute episodes and cameos did kind of overtake the original story, but I think with the potential, everything was really solid nonetheless, and it was still a blast to watch. So, like I kind of mentioned in the Gokaiger tribute episode, Akared was apparently very central to the Gokaiger versus Super Sentai crossover special, and he's also the mentor that took in Captain Marvelous, and how apparently I think he's traditioned to make appearances in every 5-10 Super Sentai anniversary seasons. I haven't watched the JoJo one yet, so we'll see. So I would have liked to maybe understand a little bit more about Akared, even though he's mostly referenced in flashbacks and stuff from Marvelous's interactions with him. And for Gokaiger, I did manage to watch a bunch of the extra stuff. So I got to see the summer movie. I saw the Gokaiger versus Gokaiger crossover, which happened only halfway into the season, which actually kind of makes a lot of sense. Toei decided to reboot the Metal Hero series, starting with Uchu Keiji Gavan, and then that replaced the yearly crossover movie for that year. So then they shifted, Gokaiger versus Gokaiger up to summer, and I'm not sure how much of that was related to the earthquakes, because watching through it, I could definitely see how they wanted to remind people about hope and really instill hope in the country again, and then how much of it was, to account for this new marketing and thing that they were doing. The funny thing about, I forget which crossover it was, I think it was the Uchu Keiji Gavan one. I forget which movie it was, but I think it was the Uchu Keiji Gavan one. And then there's a scene where all of the Rangers encounter a prison ward, and it's all of the, or not all, but it's a bunch of the previous villains. So, and that was kind of fun, being able to recognize who was who and what they've been up to. These villains were the comedic type. They weren't the super serious ones that they bring back every now and then. Oh, and they even had a monster. I think it was this one. They even had a monster who was comprised of a combination of all the different goons that have ever shown up in Super Sentai, because each Super Sentai has a goon, some type of goon. Now, some other things that I liked how each tribute episode they played the theme song in some kind of way. Oh, and a few other side notes. I did really enjoy how in a majority of the tribute episodes they did play the original theme song of that season. Some didn't really go that way, but the ones that did, I'm glad they did it. They're running out of space because in one of the episodes they basically combined 5 cameos and tributes into one, where they said, "Oh, we've been watching the whole time. You can accept our power," because I guess they couldn't afford to, time-wise and budget-wise, they just couldn't afford to have him on for that long, so they kind of had to just go through it like that. But they did have a scene where each of the 5 Rangers does morph into a respective member of the power that they got. Yeah, so with that being said, it really makes me wonder what they're going to do for the 50th anniversary. I mean, I know we're on the 44th season, and technically the 45th anniversary, but I wonder what they're going to do for the 50th. I wonder how they're going to top this. Just on to my favorite episode, episode 28, Wings Are Eternal, and that is the Jetman tribute episode. After watching Gokaiger the first time, this was my favorite episode. I think part of it is because Jetman is a season I had absolutely no introduction to, because even though technically I didn't have an introduction to any of the seasons, at least I had some familiarity with it just because I've seen the suit design before from Power Rangers, so to an extent it felt somewhat familiar. Jetman was completely foreign to me. Something to note about the effectiveness of this episode: there is no big Toku scene, there is no mecha scene. They do so the special power for this episode is in Jetman. They're able to become this phoenix and fly through the enemy, and that's like the special power, that's like the big finisher. And I think in Jetman they don't really achieve that until the end, from what I remember correctly. So then kind of seeing that redone with better CGI is pretty nice. And lastly, it's just a good standalone episode because you find out that Ikari guy was a ghost all along, because it's like the Sixth Sense. Even though I never actually watched the movie, but I know that is the big twist at the end. He's been dead all this time, and I had to read up on the wikis for this before I eventually watched the episode again and eventually watched Jetman. Apparently it was left ambiguous as to whether or not he actually died at the end of his season. After watching Jetman, I would say I would assume he died. Apparently it was left ambiguous. That's why Ikari guy could not see the ghost of Yuki guy, but everyone else could. The first time I watched it, I was really stuck on what he said to the Rangers about, "It's your team's turn to protect that sky." Thought it was kind of like this whole thing about like what it really meant to be a Sentai, and for some reason, out of all of the episodes, even though all of the episodes kind of follow a similar format where the Rangers are looking for a previous Sentai team for a power, and they kind of have to go through somewhat of a trial and tribulation. This one felt different. I can't put my finger on it. It could just be a certain bias, but it felt like this episode also felt like this was the first time that the Rangers were really being helped. I don't know, I can't really put my finger on it right now, but that's kind of the way I want to describe it. Even though they get a lesson from all of the Sentai teams that they encounter, something about this one just felt different. Oh, maybe that's why. So maybe the reason why I feel that way is because when Yuki Guy is telling them, it's their team's turn to protect that sky, and like it felt like a whole, this is what it means to be a Sentai, and especially kind of makes sense because they're space pirates. They're actually aliens. They're not human, except for Yukari Guy, Gokai Silver. So maybe that's why he didn't really need to hear it. But so maybe that's why it felt like this episode, out of all the other ones, felt like this one really embodied the meaning of what it means to be a Super Sentai for me. But then, weirdly enough, the second time I watched it was literally only that last scene that really covers it. Because the second time I watched it around, I noticed more of like what was going on for that episode, and the monster of the week for that episode was actually someone from Captain Marvelous's past, and it kind of brought up this weird feeling within Captain Marvelous, and how he had this like bizarre feeling of the fear of death. So on that second watch through, it didn't really feel like they covered that same kind of theme again. But when I actually finally watched through Jetman in January of 2020, it all made sense. Both of those themes actually apply. Even though I watched Jetman after my second watch through of Gokaiger, I did go back to watch the episode of Gokaiger, and I actually picked up on a lot more. For instance, at the gravesite, you notice things that reference the previous rangers that are putting things at the guy's grave. For instance, they put a pack of cigarettes and Macallan, which were things that Yuki Guy enjoyed. But then you also notice the vegetables, because the Yellow Ranger was a farmer. You see a red and white rose because, spoiler alert, they get married at the end of Jetman. You actually see a cup of ramen that says Ako-chan, who is the Blue Ranger, and there's a whole episode about that. So what I picked up on after watching Jetman and going back to watch this episode was no one other than Yuki Guy could have given them this lesson. Because, as a bit of background, Yuki Guy in Jetman was the most reluctant one to ever want to join a Sentai. He a bit of background, he gets struck by the ray that gave everyone their powers, and he doesn't even want to be a Jetman. He doesn't want to be part of Super Sentai at all. He doesn't really care about protecting the planet. He said, humans are foolish, they could stand it out anyway. As you go through Jetman, you see how he actually grows into his position as a Jetman Super Sentai Ranger. And, he references the blue sky. I know it's not like a new, that distinctive a phrase, but, it is something that he references a lot. That's where the theme of not wanting, or the theme of the importance and the purpose of Super Sentai really sticks, is because Yuki Guy, the guy who did not want to even become a Sentai, is teaching them this lesson. That's where that comes from. But then, when I was watching through Jetman, there's an episode where, Guy gets infected with something, so he could die, and it's gonna be a slow death. And then, and that's actually where he says the blue skyline. He's content with dying, but then, just like a few seconds before he gets, crystallized, he says he doesn't want to die. He's scared. He still wants to see the blue sky or whatever. And that's actually when it hit for me. Not only did this episode cover the theme of being, the purpose and the meaning of being a Super Sentai Ranger, but it also covered a personal reference, a personal story of Yuki Guy and his fear of death, and how that relates to Captain Marvelous and his fear of death, which was the one of the central issues of this episode. So when I watched the first time, then came back, watched the second time, then watched Jetman, and went back and looked for the references. I was like, it just made it even. It just made this episode even more my favorite episode, and I really enjoyed it. If you couldn't tell, that's why this one's a doozy. So I really loved this season. This, for emotional reasons, this will go down in my top favorite seasons. If this is what they did for the 35th season, and albeit a lot of it was kind of, in a sense, by coincidence, I'm really curious what they're gonna do for the 50th season in like 6 years. Next year is gonna be the 45th season, even though this year is the 44th season. It is the 45th anniversary. So I'm kind of curious if they're gonna do anything with Kid Major in that regard. But yeah, this was a fun season, and this will always have a special place in my heart.